Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia and let's talk books. Today I have a, what month are we in? August wrap up, yes. I'm filming this on the last day of August and I am currently reading two books, but I don't think I will be finishing them today. So I thought I would just get this filming out of the way so I can talk about the books that I read in August. And August was an okay month. I probably read about the average amount of books that I normally read in a month. August is when the fall semester started back up where I teach. So that usually means that I'm reading less once the classes start. But I did have the first half of August and I was trying to take as much advantage of the time as I could. So I don't know, I did so I think. So let me count. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books total. So a little bit, like 1 or 2 books higher than I normally do when I'm working. So I will take it. I will absolutely take it for now. So the first book that I finished reading in August was The Plague. This book I started when I was traveling up in Canada, and so it took me a little while to get into it, but in the end I think I really enjoyed certain aspects of it. I liked the kind of intellectual debate that is parked in my head about the way we treat or we deal with death and the way we treat kind of health issues. The story, by the way, by Albert Camus, takes place in a town in North Africa, and it's a town like all other towns. And actually, I'm not going to say too much about this book because I did do a dedicated review to it because this book is part of my Reading the French Classics series. But it is a very good book. The story is really interesting. It takes place in this little town, and it's supposed to be a stand-in for basically any town anywhere. This book has sometimes been read as an allegory for World War II, and I thought the allegory elements were there, but they weren't super pronounced. Like, I was looking for them because that's what I was expecting out of this book, and while they were there, they didn't take over the rest of the story. So I gave that 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was a book that I had originally picked out for a readathon, and I didn't get to it during the readathon, but I went ahead and finished it in August. And that is Acting on Impulse by Mia Sosa. This book is fantastic. It starts off with a couple meeting on an airplane, and so it's a really cute, meet cute, and but it's also kind of a regular person dating a celebrity. And I typically don't gravitate towards books like that, but this one really grabbed my attention from the very beginning, and it was hard to put down. Like, it was good, and I couldn't stop reading it, and to me that's like a sign of a really great storytelling. So what did I give it? I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because it was just like the right book at the right time. Everything in here worked for me. Like, I have 0 complaints about it. And I normally, I am a romance reader, but I normally don't read contemporaries. Usually I prefer historical romances. But this one just it shocked me how much I enjoyed it. The next book was also a romance, and I read Alisha Ray's Hate to Want You. This is part of the Forbidden Heart series, so it's the first one. And I really enjoyed this. Again, it's a contemporary romance, which I normally don't read, but lately that is the only kind of romance I've been reading has been contemporary, so I don't know what's happening with me. I guess I'm branching out a little. But Hate to Want You was a 4 out of 5 stars for me, and it was really good. It took me a little bit to get into it, and there were some elements in here that I felt dragged a little bit, but I liked the story. So the story is of Livy and Nicholas Chandler, and their families, the two of them grew up together because their families were really close and they ran a business together. And then stuff happens and the families become like mortal enemies. But these two people still love each other, and they have a lot of history because this is like her coming back to town years later, and like they've they've kept contact sort of, but not really. I don't want to give anything away, but it's really cool story. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed the diversity in this. Alisha Ray writes really good sex scenes too. Really enjoyed that book overall. All right, the next book was The Wedding Date by Jasmine Gillory. This is another contemporary romance, and I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars because I read it was the last of the romance novels that I read in the month, and I had really high expectations for it. It's an interracial romance, and I thought it was going to be better, I guess, than it was. The first third of the book was so good. Again, it grabbed me from the very beginning. A lot of these books actually did. It grabbed me from the beginning, and then I felt like it got a little bit redundant because it's a kind of long distance romance where the 2 of them live on 2 different towns in California. She lives up in Northern California, I think in Sacramento, because she works for the state government. And does she work for the mayor? I forgot. Anyway, she works for the government, and he lives in LA. So there's a lot of back and forth, them flying to each other, and I felt like that part in the middle got really redundant and a little bit boring. But the beginning of the 2 of them meeting and kind of getting to know each other, that part was fantastic. And so I do recommend this book if you like contemporary romances, if you're looking maybe for an interracial one that addresses the issue of race. They don't spend a whole lot of time talking about it, but the couple does address the issue of okay, where we come from different races, and that sometimes means something in the relationship, which I really enjoyed reading. So I enjoyed it. Next book that I finished, I checked it out of my library on the Overdrive app. So I read it as an ebook, and it was Meg Cabot's The Bride Wore Size 12. This book, I love. Okay, so it's part of the Heather Wells series. This is the last one. And so for the grand finale, I had very high expectations for this book. So again, maybe the problem was more me, but there were also other issues I had with the book. It felt like she was trying to include diverse characters in it, and I felt like the author fell into the trap of creating stereotypes rather than characters, and I really didn't like that. I also felt like at this point in the series, I have gotten to know Heather Wells really well, and I like her, but some of her personality traits changed a little bit on here. She's much more decisive and in charge, which is fine. I liked that aspect of it, but I felt like she was dealing with a whole lot more insecurities earlier in the series, and not a lot of time had lapsed between the last book and this one. It felt like all of a sudden she's become very secure, and while I want to see that character arc, if I felt like it happened a little too suddenly, and I hadn't seen her developing those things enough. I don't know if I'm explaining that quite well, but I was really disappointed with this book. I was glad to be back with Heather Wells and the gang. The usual characters are all in here. I just felt like a lot of the side characters were underdeveloped, not really that fun, and they kind of mattered in the story. So yeah, overall it didn't work for me. So I'll leave it at that. So the next book that I actually checked out from my library, again, on the Overdrive app, was Neil Gaiman's The Ocean at the End of the Lane. And I listened to this one. So this was at Murphy's. I forgot her channel name, but I'll go ahead and list it on the screen and below. I had seen her talk about this, and I've only read one other Neil Gaiman, and that was American Gods, which I didn't quite like. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would based on everything I'd heard about Neil Gaiman. But she had recently read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and she had listened to it, and she's had a really good experience with it. So I thought, okay, let me give Neil Gaiman another try, because honestly, I was ready to just be done with it, and I was like, maybe he's just not for me. But she got me to pick up this second book, and this was like everything I had been expecting about Neil Gaiman. Is this like magical realism fantasy world with like strong emotions and really strong visuals and themes, and it was a good story, and he's a good storyteller, and the best of like what his writing that I had seen in American Gods, here I saw more realized. It might have helped that I listened to it, but either way, because of of how much I like this book, I went ahead and got a third book by Neil Gaiman. But so this one is about a man who's coming back to his old home, the home he grew up in, and he is kind of reminiscing, and he walks down to like the neighbor's house, and all the memories of him playing with Letty, his the neighbor's kid, come flowing back. And so it's him remembering all these things, and it was just, oh, I don't know if I can even talk about this without spoiling anything, so I'm just gonna leave it at that I really enjoyed this book. The world in it was beautiful, and just I loved listening to it. So what did I give this? I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. So that was a good book for me. The last book that I finished in August was the book club book for my in real life book club that I run, and we read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Oh my goodness, another really great reading experience. I had heard that this was a good book, but the premise honestly doesn't sound that interesting or that great. And part of it is it takes place in Shaker Heights in a suburb of Cleveland, and I'd never heard of Shaker Heights. But one of the themes that the description emphasizes that it's about a white couple in this neighborhood adopting a Chinese American baby. And then the repercussions of that, how it affects the community, blah, blah, blah. That is an element in the story. There's that storyline is definitely there, but I feel like this book is about so much more. This book is about community, how we define it, and about the little things that the little actions we take that are well-intentioned and sometimes create ripple effects. They create ripple effects across the people in our lives, the people around us, and the negative impact a lot of them have. It's also about mothers and daughters and the difficulty in some of those relationships, and wow, and about different lifestyles, right? Like the difference between people who settle down and do everything right. They get married, they have kids, they have a job, they've got everything. And the people for whom that life doesn't work and prefer a more kind of nomadic, artistic lifestyle. I really, really love this book. It was 5 out of 5 star for me. There was just so much, and the storytelling worked for me. It was really beautiful. She writes in a really great way, at least for me, because I felt like she was interweaving a lot of different stories. There's a number of different characters here, and she can write like the adults really well, and then she can write the children's perspective really well. Like it worked for me. On top of that, she was also playing with time a little bit in that there's a lot of going back for the adult characters of, okay, this is where we're at now, but there's a kind of path that brought us here. So she takes us back so we can see the path. And that all, I was so surprised when I sat there and just thought about everything she accomplished in this book. The themes, the characters, the storytelling, and how great of a writer you have to be to make so many intricate little things work. And it just, this novel works. have I sold it enough for you? All right, so those were the books that I read in the month of August. Like I said, have started work back up, so I have a feeling that September is going to be a slower reading month. I'm hoping not though, because I have some leftover books from August that, like I said, that I'm currently reading that I want to finish, and rollover books from readathons, books that I totally intended to read during a readathon, didn't get to, but I do want to get to. I want to read these books. So many books, so little time, of course. But anyways, that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you read down below and what recommendations you have, so I can keep adding books to my TBR. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.